Hey, what is up, mortals? It is Sam Gabriel here, and before we get into today's video, there are a few things I would like to say. Firstly, a thank you to everyone who worked on this project from beginning to end, and secondly, we would like to announce the WTC Naruto Minecraft server, which will be acting as the sponsor of today's video. On the WTC Naruto server, you can play as a ninja and build your own village. There are many different clans for you to choose from, so it would be awesome if you joined us over there. Now lastly, this is a complete series video. So if you're interested in seeing more of this sort of video, then make sure to leave a comment in the comment section and leave a like. It really does help. Anyway, with that out of the way, let's get into the video. Izuku ran through the burning city, with the sparks of One for All bouncing off of him as Nomu ran rampant, destroying everything. As the pros dealt with the current situation, he couldn't help but worry about something else. Midoriya couldn't help but think that there had to be a connection between the hero killer's last known location being there and the League of Villains' assault on the city. He couldn't ignore the possibility that they might be working together. If his fears of the hero killer being his former master were correct, though, then the attack might have been a way to force an association between the two. He didn't want to think about the other implications such circumstances would imply. It wouldn't be a surprise to Izuku if Ida was in pursuit of or currently encountering the vicious villain. He cycled through all of the information he knew about the hero killer. 17 heroes killed, 24 critically wounded, last sighted in Hosu, 60% of his victims found in blind corners and deserted areas. Midoriya turned into the closest alleyway. He hoped the latest bit of information he thought of might bear some fruit. Almost instantly, he wished that someone else had found them. Deku stood tall between Stain and Tenya. His expression solemn and emotions conflicting. His fears had been confirmed. Izuku? Both combatants were in disbelief, not just because the Viridian-haired boy showed up, but because of the familiarity the other had with said boy. A cacophony of conflicting emotion violently tore their way through Ida's body and cannibalized themselves until only resentment and confusion were left. Looking between the two, he now couldn't deny the similarities in weapons and costumes. He felt like a fool for not making a connection sooner. Midoriya, you know this villain? You know what he was doing to heroes, to my brother, and let it happen? Was everything you told us a lie? With how well he knew Izuku, it didn't take long to figure out what connection the two boys shared. They were obviously both from UA. The masked murderer didn't give Izuku any time to respond to the fallen hero in training. In one swift movement, Stain unsheathed a hidden knife and sent it flying into Ida's face. Deku acted on impulse. With One for All still enveloping him, he grabbed a small knife from one of his pouches and sent it sailing. The two blades clanked against each other and sailed off course. Deku adjusted his stance so that he entirely blocked Ida from the view of Stain. After surveying the situation for a second time, he started formulating a plan. Ida, what's your blood type? The duration of his quirk depends on it. I need to know how long you'll be out for. Tenya hesitated even to answer, still unsure of Midoriya's motives and untrusting of the green-themed ninja. The possibility that Deku would use the intel to assist the blade-clad maniac came to mind. He couldn't take that risk. I'm here to save you, but I can't do that if I don't know the situation, so please work with me. Midoriya turned his head slightly, flashing a comforting smile on his face in an attempt to calm his friend. Time seemed to momentarily stop for the night-themed speedster in training. It wasn't even for a second, but it felt like hours passed as the storm inside Ida quelled and light began shining through. A small, remorseful smile crept its way onto Ida's lips as he looked at his savior. Type A. As soon as Tenya murmured the words, he noticed Midoriya click something on his phone. Before Midoriya could put his cell phone back, Stain charged forward, and the former student and teacher's blades clashed. Izuku's phone crashed to the ground, and he inadvertently stomped on it, while trying not to fall from the immense force Stain was pushing on him. If it hadn't been broken from the fall, the small device was assuredly broken now that it was in pieces. Deku just hoped his message was sent in time. Stain propelled himself off Deku, using their clashing blades as a makeshift springboard. After somersaulting, he stuck the landing a fair distance away from his young adversary. Deku didn't have the luxury of time on his side. Right now, he'd just have to push down his conflicting emotions and pray that someone would find them. Deciding to assume the worst for now, he prepared himself and stared down his former teacher. Izuku, you've changed, child. A true hero. Unfortunately for you, it's my job to kill these two. And if we're forced to fight, then naturally, the weaker of us will be called. So, what now? As Stain talked, he emitted an aura that Deku had only seen twice. The first time they met and once during training, it shook him to his core both times, and this time was no different. Stain was out for blood. During their first ever meeting, he'd only experienced it for a split second and chalked it up to his imagination. The second time, however, convinced him otherwise. It didn't stem from anything drastic the second time, just some training that went too far. This time, though, it wasn't training, and there was no way out of it. Deku's heroic nature took over. He stood his ground with a confident, reassuring smile on his face. Figuring he wouldn't be able to catch Stain with his capture knives yet, he decided to take out his hunting knife. Deku sprung forth with One for All imbued in his body. Leaping above Stain, he let gravity do its thing and plummeted face first toward the villain. He fended off an onslaught of knives from directly below and fell towards his target. When the hero in training got close enough, Stain sent an arcing slash at the boy. Deku brought both blades in front of him to meet his former master's sword. As they clashed, Deku twisted his body and, in a similar fashion to Stain, propelled himself and landed some distance behind the Crimson Crusader. Both ideology-driven fighters flung their metallic projectiles at each other before charging headfirst to meet with another clash of their swords. "Stain! You don't have to keep doing this! Turn yourself in and I'm sure something can be worked out!" Their blades parted as the two began going clash for clash. It looked as though they were fighting a mirror of one another. "The world must be purged of fakes, Izuku. This plague-killing society must be eradicated." Deku feinted a slash with his hunting knife, folding his arm in at the last second and sending a spinning sidekick into Stain's stomach. Stain was sent rocketing back again. "There's other ways to do this! Ways where making a mistake like tonight won't lead to irreversible consequences!" Stain's eyes narrowed, and his grin fell to a scowl, listening to his former apprentice. "What are you getting at, child?" Adjusting his stance, Deku put his knife away and readied himself in case he needed to use one of his capture weapons. "I've met good people at UA. Real heroes that want to help people. They have other reasons for pursuing the hero career, but above all, they want to save people." Seeing no reason to dignify his failed apprentice's remark, Stain licked his blade. He was able to draw some blood without notice and saw no reason to keep holding back against his adversary. Even with Deku having type O blood, it would be enough time to remove the cancer infecting his young apprentice. Mostly ignoring the young man's pleas, he stalked the paralyzed, armor-clad lad. However, said lad listened intently to his friend's passionate speech. "You're right, he hasn't been acting like a hero lately. Revenge has been blinding him. But in the short time I've known him, he's been more heroic and selfless than a lot of pros." Those words resonated with Ida. The anguish and guilt he felt for betraying his friend's expectations and then accusing him of being in league with a criminal were immeasurable. If he had the chance, he would make up for it. He couldn't, though. It was too late. He was about to be killed for being so unheroic and dragging his brother's name in the mud. He was no hero. Closing his eyes, he waited for his demise. The next thing he knew, it was freezing cold, and there was a gust of wind. Still unable to move his head, Tenya glanced behind him the best he could. Sure enough, Shoto had arrived. The three boys had a short exchange with the two on the floor, expressing their surprise at either Todoroki being there or the fact that he was using his left side. As soon as the three had their short reunion and Todoroki was informed of Stain's quirk, the fun began. The heterochromous boy sent blasts of fire and ice towards Stain. Immediately, he noticed the similarities between Midoriya and Stain's fighting styles. While this was something he would have to question his new friend about, he decided to use this to his advantage for now. Almost as soon as they started fighting, a dance similar to the one he and Izuku had during the sports festival began. Stain would pressure Shoto with a mixture of throwing knives and rushing forth. Todoroki would respond with a thick wall of ice. In turn, Stain either slashed through or jumped over the newly formed obstacle. This was followed by Shoto blasting fire at the masked cretin. The process continued a few times with some variation. Taking care of the villain's projectiles proved to be no problem. It was his sword that proved to be trouble. Ever so slowly, Todoroki was losing ground. Deku knew that even as things seemed for the moment, Shoto was on the losing end of the battle and needed help. Struggling to help his ally to do anything, Deku began straining himself to move. His hand twitched. The upper hand Stain had was becoming more apparent as the fight dragged on. Shoto lost track of Stain. The villain's speed had been more than a surprise for him. Looking around, the red and white-themed child found Stain behind him. Deku was in mid-air combat with the assailant. and the two were going blow for blow. Unable to get a hit in as they fell to the ground, neither deciding to use their weapons, Todoroki sent out a blast of fire towards the two combatants. Deku cleared out of the way, and Stain barely got burned. They continued their assault with a mix-up of attacks between the two of them. They were at a complete stalemate. Neither party was bulging. "Grab the pro hero and leave me. My actions have more than proven how unworthy I am to be called a hero." Ida's voice was weak, and Todoroki almost missed what the young man said. He didn't like what he was hearing from his classmate, not one bit. "If you don't like the type of hero you're becoming now, then figure out who you want to become and never let go of that." The uncharacteristically animated words that Shoto spoke resonated with Tenya. Thinking about it again, him asking them to leave was the coward's way out. Letting himself get killed would only be him running from his mistakes, not fixing them. He wanted to be like his brother, a kind hero who took charge and worked well with others for the greater good, feeling reinvigorated and as though he had a new purpose in life. The new Ingenium fought off his paralysis and stood with a new look in his eyes. Just after he got up, the blaring sounds and lights of police cars were heard, along with the voices of some pros. Using this as a much-needed distraction, Stain left while everyone's attention was turned away from him. The only thing left behind was his cell phone. The three boys hoisted Native up as comfortably as they could and carried him out of the alleyway. Stain had gotten away from them, but at least everyone was safe. When they got to the street, the trio was met with a couple of police cars, Gran Torino, and one of Endeavor's sidekicks. Now in the clear, Tenya profusely apologized to classmates for what he had done. The two began to comfort him, but it was cut short. A giant, lanky Noma with wings flew towards them and snatched Deku. As the two pros stood in shock, Ingenium began barking orders at Shoto. "Todoroki, I need you to create a path of ice going towards that villain now!" Shoto heard the desperation in his classmate's voice and had an idea of what he meant. With a quick nod, he complied. Stain waited nearby for the heroes to leave. He wanted to stay close to Izuku for now and see if he was still worthy of the title of true hero. As he watched, a monster akin to the ones the dreaded League of Villains used swooped down fast. None of the heroes reacted, though. They stayed still. Stain got up to move and save the boy himself, but before he could, he saw something that took him by surprise. The blue-haired boy that had previously been fueled by revenge seemed to be ordering the other child to do something. The other boy, the one with dual hair colors, created a slide of ice heading towards the winged beast. Stain watched in awe as the child he had previously tried to kill used the ice slide, along with his own quirk, to shoot into the sky and to grab Izuku. Just as soon as he got a hold of him, the boy shouted something and, at a near-blinding speed, spun straight up and axe-kicked the creature into the ground while taking the brunt of the fall for Izuku. He stared in awe of what had happened. Maybe his apprentice had been right in his ramblings. Maybe Stain was oversimplifying things. He walked away from the scene to contemplate his ideology and what he had been doing. Thank you all for sticking around, and I hope that you enjoyed. Before you leave, we would just like to let you know that We the Celestials has many other channels for your entertainment and viewing purposes. All the information you'll need is right below here in the description, so feel free to check out all the other incredible projects our team creates. Secondly, on behalf of We the Celestials, I'd like to thank everyone involved in the production of today's awesome content. Their details will be in the description below. That's all for today's video, so goodbye and have a divine day.